Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. Of course, as always, I am your host, Charles Hamaker, here with you in the Black Media Matters studio here on, again, another day where the weather is back and forth. I came downtown not knowing if it was going to be cold or not. I digress. We get downtown, and it's fine. It's fine. So, not so fine as we jump right into the show here. The Seattle Mariners, the Mariners continue to struggle offensively. I mean, this is a tale that we've, again, been talking about for about 3 years here. 4 if you want to include the COVID year in 2020 with a shortened season and no fans in the stands. We'll get right into it. The Mariners headed out on a 6-game road trip over in the AL East. Tough division there where just about every team is above 500. You've got the best team in baseball in the Rays, who come to town later this week, which doesn't make things easier. The Yankees, of course, who pretty handily took care of our Mariners last time they were here just a few weeks ago, and the Orioles, who the Mariners battled for wildcard positioning last year, added former Mariner Adam Frazier at second base. Have some young and incredible talent. So it's safe to say the road trip wasn't going to be an easy one by any way that you slice it. So we go into it. The first 3 games here in New York, starting on June 20th at the Yankees, a 1-3 loss. Our player of the game, left fielder Jared Kelenic. Kelenic drives in the only run the Mariners score that day with an RBI triple, 1 hit, 1 RBI, and 1 walk on the day. Nothing short here. To keep this Yankees lineup that is without Aaron Judge, who might be, out for the remainder of the season, unclear at the moment. To keep him to 3 runs is fine, but again, to only put up 1 run is unacceptable in any sort of means there. Game 2, January. Oops, we're going way back in time. June 21st at the Yankees, a 2-4 loss. So the Mariners lose the series there. Seattle, it's 2-4, so 2 runs looks closer. This was a not as close game as it looks. The Mariners really weren't able to put anything together until late, which includes our player of the game, pinch hitter to then second baseman Dylan Moore. Demo, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 RBI. His first hit at the big league level this year is a pinch hit homer. It's the first pinch hit homer since Cal Raleigh's drought-busting homer against the Athletics in the month of September last year. Just frustrating. Again, nothing really doing there. You're not getting production from anybody, really. Again, while the Yankees are a good team, it's no excuse for you to not put up runs because that's just not how things work. You can't just make excuses like that and be okay with not putting runs up. In the final game of the series, to salvage something, they do put up some offense for production on this 22nd with a 10-2 win. 2 players of the game here. First, right fielder Teoscar Hernandez. Teo, who has been heating up in the month of June largely. 3 hits, 2 runs, and 2 RBIs, including a solo homer on the day. And our second player of the game, who continues to get better after being called up from AA Arkansas with the Travelers, having a rough start against these Yankees. One of them, no, I could be wrong. I am wrong. That was Bryce Miller. I apologize. Another young pitcher that was called up from AA this year. Brian Wu won 5 2/3 innings pitched, only 2 hits given up on the day, no runs allowed, 3 walks, which is an area to work on, but still, no runs allowed and only 2 hits is nothing to scoff at, and then 5 strikeouts. So that's, nice to salvage that one there. The 10 runs is exciting, sure, but at the end of the day, you needed more in the first 2 games to make this competitive and not have to salvage that 3rd game. We go over here to Baltimore, where the Orioles have really been able to turn things up this year. June 23rd at the Orioles to begin that series, a 13-1 win. So back-to-back games there where the Mariners really showed some offensive potential, some good competitive at-bats, knock the starter out of the game early, really get to Baltimore's bullpen in the first game of the series, which is what you want to do so that the Orioles don't have as much to rely on in terms of their talented relief arms throughout those next two games. Two players of the game here. First, Teoscar Hernandez once again in right field. 3 hits, 3 runs, and 2 RBIs on the day for Teo. And then number 2, with all that offensive production, we have another hitter here, third baseman Eugenio Suarez, 3 hits, 2 runs, and 3 RBIs. So I just talked about it. You knock the starter out early, you get to the bullpen in game 1. You've got these back-to-back games against the Yankees, and then this first game against the Orioles. You think, hey, let's carry over that production, see if we can string these wins together, get over 500, get to 500, and then, continue and stack on that. Not the case. June 24th at the Orioles was a 4-6 loss. Our player of the game, number 1, center fielder Julio Rodriguez. Julio, 3 hits, 1 run, 1 RBI, and a solo homer. He also robbed a solo shot to keep the deficit at 1. This game did go into extra innings, and it was only really able to go into extra innings because of 2 things. First would be Julio robbing the homer, and I believe the 7th inning to keep the deficit at 1. And then because of our second player of the game here, designated hitter Mike Ford, 2 hits, 2 runs, 2 RBIs, 2 solo homers for Mike Ford. The second of the day coming on a solo shot in the bottom of the 9th inning with 2 outs, which tied the game at 4 against the Orioles' best relief pitcher, who had not given up a home run in his home ballpark this year. And he'd only given up 2 homers at all in the season to that point. This game would go into extra innings. The Mariners would fail to do anything offensively, and the Orioles would hit a 2-run walk-off homer to seal the deal on this one. Very frustrating to, be able to sort of control your destiny on that game and not really do anything about it. So you say, hey, let's move on here to game 3. It sets up the rubber match. As long as you can win series, that's a big deal. Not so much. June 25th at the Orioles to wrap up that series, a 2-3 loss. Our player of the game, catcher Cal Raleigh, 1 hit, 1 run, and 2 RBIs for Raleigh. A 2-run homer early in the game, lands on Utah Street. Now, if you don't know, it's not spelled like the state of Utah either. It's EUTAW, Utah Street. Utah Street is a street behind right field in Baltimore where homer, it's a very hard to hit a homer out there. And if you do, the Orioles will mark the spot and put a little plaque there. Only 2 Mariners have done it before Raleigh. Sam Haggerty last year, and then Ken Griffey Jr., everybody knows the kid, prior to that. So Raleigh joins that. That's early in the game, right? So it's a 2-run homer early in the game, get a little 2-run lead. And then outside of that, the Mariners only got the Mariners did not hit. They had 3 hits in total. They had 3 hits in total in that game. So just a really, really frustrating way to go. The offensive inconsistencies continued there. Before we really jump into that, we'll look here at our player of the week. Our player of the week, Cal Raleigh. Now, I know I mentioned Teoscar in those 2 games, but Cal has been far and away the best player over the course of the past 7 games. 9 hits, 6 runs, 2 homers, 4 RBIs for a 346 batting average, a 346 on base percentage, and a 577 slugging percentage. Obviously, as I mentioned, becoming the 3rd Mariner to hit a homer onto Utah Street. Now, I don't need to come on here and repeat the same issues because it is the same issues here. Now, at some parts in the season, you could say, hey, it's only these players in the lineup, the bottom 3, or this player's having a slump, or these guys. No. If we look at it here, we look at all of the players who are getting consistent playing time, all of the standard fielders, whether it be, I know Cal splits some time with Tal Murphy behind the dish, but it's mostly Cal who gets the plate appearances. We'll just look, excuse me, at some of the batting average over the course of the past 7 games for the Mariners. Teoscar Hernandez and Julio Rodriguez are both at a 214 batting average. Jared Kelenic has struggled over the course of June with a 160 batting average. Ty France over the past 7 games, a guy that's a pure hitter. The best of the ones so far with a 222 batting average. Eugenio Suarez struggled most of the season, 259 batting average. So, Gino's being able to find some ground there. JP Crawford, who is a major positive point at the plate for the Mariners for the good amount of the year, a 167 batting average. Mike Ford, who Yes, that big homer was clutch, and his rate chart is very funny because Mike only has like 8 hits on the day. 6 of them are homers, 2 of them are singles. So that's fine. His batting average on the season's not great at 174. His batting average over the past 7 games, credit, he's only got 19 plate appearances, or at bats, pardon me, is 105. So he's a designated hitter. Yes, it's nice to have the tanks that he's hitting, but I'd like to get more out of that. AJ Pollock, a guy who's been brought in to hit, basically be a designated hitter, give Jared Kelenic a day off in left field here and there, or when Teoscar gets the day off in right field and they put him at DH, they send Jared over to right, put Pollock in left. Pollock over the past 7 games, again, 13 at bats, not a lot to work off of. A 154 batting average, but in general, similar to Ford, 159 batting average. And then we go to Colton Wong. Like, Colton's struggled, yes, over the course of the year. I know that. 190 batting average. So Gino, the best out of those over the past 7 games with 259, and Cal in general the best with a 346, pardon me. This simply just won't get it done. And at this point in the season, there's not much you can do. There's not much you can do with the current farm system that the Mariners have in terms of a trade. June 27th, which is tomorrow, was when the Mariners made the trade to acquire Carlos Santana, who helped them win a lot of games in June and July and brought great clubhouse presence to the Mariners. Will the Mariners be able to complete a trade to help them turn things around? Will the Mariners be able to turn things around in general is the major question at this point in time. Now, they aren't exactly way far out of a wild card spot, which I hate having to talk about wild card spots at this point of the season because you'd like to be arguably talking about a division. I think it's safe to say that the division is out of the question right now with the way that the Mariners have been playing, with the way that the Rangers have been playing above them. So if we look over here to the wild card, again, this is late June. We look over here to the wild card. Baltimore, New York, and Toronto hold those top 3 spots for the wild card. The Mariners are 4.5 games out of a wild card spot. That's doable. That is doable. But at the same time, you've got the Astros, who are in a lull right now, but we'll get Yordan Alvarez back eventually. The Angels here, who knows what the Angels are going to do. They outscored the Rockies 32-12 in their past series and still lost the series to the Rockies. The Red Sox, who are generally a mess. So again, it is doable. I wouldn't say the wild card is not doable, but with the inconsistencies that you have at the plate, it's continually frustrating. I said it before. I think I said it last week. It might have been just last week. It has to be internal. It has to be internal for the Mariners. And at this point, who's holding these players accountable for this? Who is the one that's going to step up and be the captain of sorts and really, bring this to light and say, hey, we need to do better? Because at this point, it just looks like we're treading water. And not even that, drowning a little bit. Treading water and drowning here and there. It's just not acceptable. And it's frustrating. You look at the additions. Teoscar Hernandez has been playing. I talked about it last week again. He was our player of the week last week. His month of June has been good. But you look at it, Colton Wong had a decent road trip. He had a homer in New York, which was nice to see. Some quality plate appearances. But Pollock, unsuccessful. Cooper Hummel is in AAA and hasn't really done much to warrant being brought back up. Tommy Lastello was DFA'd early into the season. So there's a lot of debate on whether this falls on Jerry Dipoto or John Stanton. That's a tough question to answer because we don't really know what was – how much money was made available to sign free agents. If free agents were interested in coming here to Seattle due to it not being a hitter's ballpark, it's very tough. It is very tough because there's more than goes into it than just a yes, no, a 1 option, 2 option answer. So again, it has to be internal. It ultimately has to be internal. You could look to bring up a guy like Cade Marlowe, who's had a great last week, but ultimately his slash line in the PCL, the Pacific Coast League this year, hasn't been too amazing, too eye-popping to take away the at-bats that AJ Pollock's been getting. So there's little in terms of call-ups that you can do. There's nobody with the Rainiers that's necessarily lighting things up at the plate. It's just tough. It's tough because it's like you are trying to solve a problem with very limited resources here, and you're not going to be able to land a big bat in a trade. And I don't think the Mariners want to get a stopgap guy, because the way that Jerry Dipoto has said trades work is they want to get guys who have term for the future. You know, they were able to extend Luis Castillo when they acquired him last year. I don't think they're going to be willing to take a guy who's got half a year and give away some future assets for that. So at the end of the day, this is a tough situation that the Mariners are in. Ultimately, can they do it? I think it's possible. I entirely think it's possible. But with the sort of pitching that you're squandering and the fact that you've got so many hitters who, when I say so many, that's already a problem. You've got so many hitters who are just not doing well. It's not a good sign, and you don't have a lot of prospect value in your farm system right now that you're going to be able to flip for a bat. You know, so I did get a thing over the course of the last homestand where one of the pitchers for, I believe it was the Marlins, I think it was Yuri Perez, had a great game. And someone goes, oh, well, he's pitching well, you shouldn't blame the hitters. It doesn't matter. If I sit here and we go, oh, he pitched well, for all the games that, sure, an opposing pitcher pitched well, I mean, that's just not how sports work. You can't tip your cap all the time. Yes, when a guy has a good outing and it's just simply great, sure. But the Mariners ultimately have not gained that sort of benefit of the doubt over the course of this year. They've not been a good hitting team. They've not been a good hitting team again over the past 3 seasons. So again, it has to be internal. Obviously, with the summer months coming in here, the ball will have a little more carry. But and Scott Service has talked about this. We'll probably talk about this today when we go down to the ballpark. Getting those competitive at-bats is big. Not swinging, not chasing, being smarter, trying to keep the line moving. And outside of the 2 wins that they had and a little bit in the losses that they blew, Seattle hasn't done that. So it's ultimately on themselves. And they can't really afford to hope that, you know, Jerry Dipoto is going to swing some great trade that's going to help change the course of the season for them. So again, I could continue to hammer on the same points, and I did a little bit to that point. But it's just going to have to be internal for the Mariners if they want to turn things around. Something that was scary and would have hurt that, excuse me, is on the 20th, shortstop J.P. Crawford left the game early against the Yankees with a right shoulder contusion. There was an update on that. JP said that x-rays were clean, but he'd get an MRI on the 21st. He could barely lift his right arm after colliding with the Yankees' Harrison Bader. He would be able to play in game 2 of the Orioles series there, would actually hit a home run in that game. So thankfully that wasn't too bad. I mean, it did hold him out for a few games, but avoided any sort of long-term injury there. In terms of team-related news, you've probably seen it by now, but if not, it was announced that center fielder Julio Rodriguez committed to the Home Run Derby for a second year. Lost last year to now Padres player Juan Soto by 1 homer in the final round of the Derby, despite hitting 81 homers, which was the most, I believe, most ever in a Derby. And this was really, last year's Derby was really when Julio's star started to take off. He may not make the all-star roster for the game itself. In terms of percentages, you know, when you want to look at how much of a chance he's got to win it this year in front of his home ballpark, his average exit velocity, max exit velocity, and hard hit percentage are all in the 90th percentile plus in all of baseball. So basically those numbers mean Julio does hit the ball very hard. He does, though, have 13 homers so far on the current season. So what Mariners make the all-star team, I don't really know. It'll probably be a pitcher. It'll probably be Luis Castillo or maybe George Kirby gets the nod. But I don't think any of the position players, I mean, none of the position players will be starters. And I don't know if any of them will get in as reserves. So we'll see on that. We'll keep you updated on that. we look ahead here to the current Mariners homestand. They are back for 6 games this week, starting with a 3-game set. Starts tonight. You can come and join us on the ballpark for as low as $10. All 3 of these games against Washington, the other Washington, not a state, are as low as $10. They're all value games. May 26th and 27th against the Nationals are both 6:40 p.m. first pitch times. And then May 28th versus the Nationals on Wednesday is a matinee game at 1:10 p.m. Pacific. The Nationals aren't exactly a great team. It's funny, I mentioned the Padres as Juan Soto. His teammate, Xander Bogaerts, had this quote after the Padres lost the series to the Nationals and said, "We're playing Washington," in response to some frustration about losing that series. So, hey, maybe that motivates Washington. Maybe it's showing that the Padres have also generally disappointed this year. But if we look to Washington right now in the NL East, they are 17 games below 500 at a record of 30-47. They are on a 2-game winning streak, but they are 3-7 over the course of their past 10 games. So after that, on Thursday, the Mariners have a day off. But on Friday, they welcome the best team in all of baseball into town, in the Tampa Bay Rays. That will not be easy. There are some fun promotions in that game. But on top of that, on top of the promotions, you get, a pretty big test for the Mariners. I know that the road trip with the Yankees and the Orioles was a big test, but this one even more so. You're playing the best team in all of baseball in the Rays, who sit at a 54-win, 27-loss record. They're 5-5 over their past 10 games, so not too great. They're on a 1-game win streak. That'll probably change by the time we see them. That game on Friday, the 30th, is a 7:10 start. Then the first on Saturday is a 4:15 p.m. Pacific time start. It's kind of weird. It doesn't really happen too often here in Seattle. Excuse me. And then July 2nd versus the Rays on Sunday is a normal 1:10 p.m. start. So, as I said, best team in baseball. Nice weekend games here. It'll be busy Saturday in Seattle with the Rain and the Sounders both playing that day. And some fun promotions throughout the course of that series as well against the Rays. None of them during the National Series, all of them during the Rays series. So plenty of reason to come and join us down at the ballpark. We move over here to the Storm, who they've had a 3-game homestand. I know I say homestand, it feels like that's more of a baseball term, but it's what happened with the Storm here. They played 3 games at home over the course of the past week. The first 2 games very winnable, and then the last game they were able to get a win. So 1 and 2 over the course of the past 3. Yeah. We'll get into it. The first of those 3 games on June 20th versus the Sun, a 79-85 loss. So, yes, a 6-point loss. Our player of the game, guard Jewel Lloyd, who you can see here in our photo of the game by Brian Saldana. 33 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 steals for Jewel. This is a tough one. I mean, excuse me, Connecticut obviously is... Connecticut at this point in time had the second most wins in all of the WNBA. A lot of size on that team. And just, Connecticut's been one of the better teams in the league over the course of or in recent memory, at least. Even though they lost Jonquel Jones, Seattle just some mistakes in this game, a big lull in the third quarter, and the Sun were able to pull away from this one and secure victory. So tough one there, just not being able to get more scoring in the third quarter, especially, not necessarily from Jewel Lloyd. Seattle continues to try and find more consistent scoring. And unfortunately, it was a sort of repeat performance in their next game against Indiana Fever on June 22nd. That game, more of a point differential, a 68-80 loss. Our player of the game, guard Jewel Lloyd, 19 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, and 2 steals here. And our photo of the game here by Matthew Bermudez. This one, a little more of an exaggerated scoring lull as the Storm went about 10 minutes plus without scoring a bucket. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. Not going to happen in a win, at least. And even though this Fever team is young, as you can see in the photo there with probable Rookie of the Year candidate Aaliyah Boston, Indiana was able to take advantage pretty easily and go on a 17-0 run. And the Storm tried to claw back a little bit as the game after that 17-point run, but ultimately they had dug themselves a hole that was way too big. And again, I talked about it when I mentioned the Sun, but that's just kind of an instance of the growing pains, and that just can't happen if you're going to win games there. Excuse me. But you'd like to think these mistakes are going to be learned from. There was no instance of a lull in their third game of the week, June 24th versus the Phoenix Mercury, a 97-74 win. Two players in the game here. First, guard Jewel Lloyd. You're getting sick of, well, probably not, of me saying her name. 24 points for number 24, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and 4 steals on the day. Our second player of the game, forward Joyner Holmes. Holmes, 12 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 3 blocks. Coming into this game, she only had 8 blocks in her career. And against the Phoenix here, she's got 3 of them. Our photo of the game by Matthew Bermudez is Joyner, who really had a big game. I know that Coach Quinn had talked about her length and her ability to stretch the floor, space the floor, being big for Seattle potentially, and especially given the fact that Seattle really only has 2 bigs, maybe 3 or 4. But getting a third one who can really consistently help out at the power forward will be big. And if this in game is any indication of that, Holmes will be that, could be that third option there. So our player of the week, I mean, it's pretty obvious. Jewel Lloyd over the past 3 games, averaging 25.3 points per game, 3.6 rebounds per game, 3.6 assists per game, and 3 steals per game for the Storm. And some accomplishments coming up for Jewel, and we'll mention that. We do have some injuries, so there were some injury notes for the Storm over the course of the past week. On the 21st, guard Arella Girantes, was listed as out versus the Fever with a non-COVID illness. On the 24th, she was listed as probable before the game, but then was available against the Mercury with a non-COVID illness. And forward Jordan Horson missed that game against the Mercury, that big win against the Mercury, with a right shoulder injury. So all in all, again, I talked about it primarily with the losses to the Sun and the Fever. There's some growing pains, Seattle, and it didn't happen in that game against the Mercury. That game against the Mercury was a complete team effort. 9 of the 11 players that were able to get in for Seattle found the scoreboard there. They were able to get on the board with a bucket. Seattle was able to play all of their players with Arella Girantes, Dulcie Finca Mengiadu, and Jade Melbourne getting the final 4 minutes and 4 seconds of the game. Melbourne and Girantes did not. No, Melbourne and Dulcie, I don't believe, scored, but I believe everybody else did. Joyner had a big game. Sammy Whitcomb had a big game off the bench. Jewel and Ezzy had nice games as the starters. So that was a complete game. There was really no instance of that. I think Coach Quinn said in the third they did have a little bit in that one, but they were able to adjust on it. But I don't know. It's very interesting with this team to say that they really did have a competitive chance against the Sun. And then against the Fever, that one's more frustrating because you have that 10-minute plus lull there without offensive production. And that's been the big thing, is Seattle looking for another scorer. Jewel Lloyd is the 1. Ezzy Magbegor is the 2. Who's the 3? It's Kia Nurse has been here and there. Even against the Mercury, though, she was kind of didn't have the biggest game. Mercedes Russell seems to be finding her game a little bit, which is nice to see. Jordan Horson has been excellent over the course of June, has really been able to find things, but didn't have her in that game against the Mercury. They're not sure what her status will be for the next game tomorrow. We'll obviously hear from that when we get the status report. But the point being, before I ramble on, is that Seattle's putting things together. Will it result in a playoff berth? I don't know. That was my big hot take in the off season. I don't know if that'll pay off, but there are really positive signs with this Storm team. This is a mix of players who have been in the WNBA for a different allotted times, and some rookies, as well as young players who haven't necessarily gotten a chance to prove what they can do in this league. So there are positive signs, is what I will say. I say there's more positive than negative here. The negative is the negative is more bittersweet than bittersweet, because we know what the issues are with this team. It's primarily their presence in the paint. Points in the paint's a big issue. Their rebounding's been a struggle over the course of the last 2 seasons, really. And that kind of consistency scoring, has been the big thing. Being able to get over that third quarter and really be able to push towards the home stretch there. They against the Sun and the Fever, they weren't able to do that. Very emphatically against the Fever, they weren't able to do that. So again, more positive than negative, and that's I'll continue to emphasize that these growths in these individual players is what will be big as we kind of long-term, big picture transition into a new era of Storm basketball. So. And hey, if Jordan Holmes can really start to find a rhythm and uses this game as a launch point, that's a big addition there to get more production off of the bench. So happy with it. Again, I know the players probably weren't happy with either of those losses, but I see more positive than negative, as I've said here. I mentioned accolades with Jewell Loyd. 2 of them here. On June 20th, Jewell was named the WNBA's Western Conference Player of the Week. The Gold Mamba was named the WNBA, Western Conference Player of the Week. Announced on Tuesday. In 3 games over that past week, she averaged 24.3 points per game, 3.7 assists, 3.3 rebounds per game, as the Storm went 2-0 during that trio of road games. So safe to say another good case for this week. The Eastern Conference Player of the Week was Aaliyah Boston. And then on the 25th, yesterday, Jewell Loyd was named an all-star starter for the 3rd time in her career. It is her 5th all-star game. She is leading the WNBA in scoring with 25.4 points per game, nearly 3 points per game better than the next closest player. She tallied 22 points in Saturday's win over Phoenix. Scoreboard said 24. That could be wrong. Marking her 8th game this season, scoring 20 plus, tied for the most in the league. Loyd also became the first player in WNBA history to score 300 plus points and 40 plus 3-point field goals through a player's first 12 games in the season. Loyd scored an impressive 21 points in the last All-Star game, which was in Chicago, which is your hometown, tying an All-Star game record with 7 3-pointers. The All-Star game reserves will be announced on July 1st. That's likely when we'll see Ezi Magbagor. Starters are voted on by the fans, players, and media members, with the league's coaches selecting the All-Star. Oh, interesting. Okay, so we'll see on that. So, yeah, it'll probably be Jewell and Ezi. I don't think it'll probably be Ezi. I hope so. Ezi's been having a great year. Her development's been great to watch, becoming that second option, having some great games in terms of blocks, and being big as one of the few paint presences that the Storm have. So looking ahead here, another 3-game week for the Storm, but they only play 2 teams. So that's because they play a home-and-home against the Minnesota Lynx. June 27th, tomorrow, at the Lynx, is a 5 p.m. Pacific time start time. That is on the CBS Sports Network, Fox 13, not Fox 13 Plus, Fox 13, and Amazon Prime Video. They come back after a day, June 29th versus the Lynx, a 7 o'clock start, which is on CBS Sports Network, Fox 13 Plus, and then Amazon Prime Video. And then they stay at home for a rematch with the New York Liberty on July 2nd for a 3 o'clock start. That is CBS Sports Network, Fox 13 Plus, and Amazon Prime Video once again. So Minnesota has been one of the teams, including Phoenix, that the Storm have been battling as some of the worst in the league, record-wise. And then you play Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, John Cole Jones, Courtney Vandersloot, and Liberty, who are considered one of the league's super teams. But they're still figuring things out. Like any quote-unquote super team, they're still figuring things out. I mean, they have an 8-2 record, which is tied for the best in the league. Oh, wait, no. That's in their last 10. Pardon me. They've played less games though. Yeah. The third most wins in the league behind Las Vegas and Connecticut. So, I mean, they're 8-2 over their past 10. Yeah. So it won't be easy. So we'll see if Seattle can get any revenge. That is a game earlier in the season that they did actually have a fighting chance in. So who knows? Maybe they'll learn from their last game and really be able to bring it to the Liberty in a big upset. No upsets for our Sounders, who did play LAFC again. LAFC sitting at the top of the Western Conference. Somehow the Sounders are hanging around near the top there. We'll continue on here. June 21st at LAFC, a 1-0 loss. With shutouts, we don't have a player of the match. Seattle conceded in the 44th second of the match. Not even a minute in. LAFC gets one. Seattle not able to score, not be able to answer back. And a frustrating one there. As they had been the better team when the teams met early in the season up in Seattle. Then they return home after a few days to play Orlando City, who is in a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, but not necessarily near what LAFC has been doing. They're scoreless draw. June 24th versus Orlando City. Our player of the match, midfielder João Paulo. JP, an 8.2 match rating, 2 shots and 2 chances created, including an 80% passing percentage. The offensive attack continues to falter, and Yeimar Gomez Andrade really shows how a lot of us felt in this photo by our photo of the match here by Anthony May. Like the Mariners hitting struggles, I'll say it again with the Sounders. I don't want to repeat it too much. The attack, where's the attack? In this game, we'll look at the injury report versus Orlando and LAFC. Center back Javier Arriaga suffered an injury when he was on international duty with Ecuador. Midfielder Ethan Dobelair had a right hamstring strain. Midfielder Sota Kitahara had a right quad strain. Those two players likely would have seen time on the bench. And then you are without Jordan Morris, Christian Roldan, and Alex Roldan, who are all on international duty. So that was against LAFC. Against Orlando, all of those players, plus Raul Ruiz-Diaz. Raul, his father recently passed away, actually, and that's why in this photo here with Yeimar, you can see the black band around his arm. All of the players for the Sounders, you can see it on Cody Baker as well to the right, had a black band to show support for Raul. So hoping that Raul is doing all right. Obviously, a lot of compassion to him and his family right now in this time. But you could certainly look at the injury report there. You're without Morris, both Roldans, Ruiz-Diaz, some bench players to give you depth. And so, yeah, it's understandable that they're going to, see a lack of production, so to say, in terms of the attack. But there are still very much capable players on that roster for Seattle that did play to generate chances. And there were. Seattle actually came out really positively to begin that match in terms of attack. They looked good on the attack in the first few minutes. There were 2 chances within the first 5 minutes. You say, hey, maybe something's different here. Maybe they're awake. Maybe they've got something going. No, that fell flat pretty quickly. Well, not pretty quickly. Coming out of the second half, there was some stuff there. But then late towards the end of the match, the Sounders were really fighting to not concede. Because of that, they had a late surge, Orlando did. Seattle was kind of lucky to get out of there with a draw. They did have more shots, but they had less expected goals, less possessions, less big chances. It's very. But if I look in the chances here, in the shots on goal, and the shots in general, Seattle had a ton within the Orlando box, and just to continue to have those struggles, to have the most generated expected goals in all of MLS, to have a ton of veteran players have the same sort of core intact. It again. I said it with the Mariners. I don't want to harp on it too much with the Sounders because we've been talking about this for most of the year. This is internal. This is internal for Seattle. They've got winners on this team. They've got veterans on this team. Chances are being generated. The defense is playing well. This is their 10th shutout through 20 games. It's on them. It's on them. Like the Mariners, the Sounders don't have a lot they can do in terms of bringing in talent, bringing in a trade, bringing in a player ahead of the upcoming window. So it's got to be internal. It's got to be internal for Seattle. We've seen it with the Sounders where they've been able to turn things around. But time's ticking. Somehow over the course of the weekend, you sit still at third in the Western Conference. A win right now would put you up there tied for points with teams 1 and 2 in the West, which is LAFC and St. Louis. But it's got to be internal. And, they're winless over their past 5 games. They haven't had a win in their past 5 matches. It's got to be internal. Again, it's got to be internal. Don't want to harp on it too much. It's got to be internal. So we will move on here with team-related notes. We talked about it a little bit last week already, but excuse me, we'll stamp it down a little bit more. On the 20th, defender Alex Roldan was named to El Salvador's 2023 CONCACAF Gold Cup roster. He is currently already with El Salvador and started in both of the squad's friendlies in Asia this past week, a 6-0 loss to Japan on June 15th. Wow. And a 1-1 draw with South Korea that morning on the 20th, the latter of which saw Roldan score his 2nd career international goal. Roldan, a 26-year-old, has 20 career caps for El Salvador since making his international debut in a 2-0 win over Guatemala at the 2021 CONCACAF Gold Cup, which is a match in which he scored his first international goal. So very nice for Alex. Not nice for the Sounders, who are without him. We look ahead here for our Sounders, who are sitting at an 8-win, 7-loss, 5-draw record, which is good for 29 points. They are 3 points out of first, but they would lose the tiebreaker to LAFC. Right now, they're 8th in all of MLS, so Supporter Shield looks more and more out of reach, especially with how good the East has been. And 3rd in the Western Conference, as I've preached already. July 1st is their next match versus the Houston Dynamo here in Seattle at Lumen Field. That is a 7:30 p.m. start. Yes, another 7:30 p.m. start. Like all of the matches, almost all, for the Sounders this year, you can watch this one on Apple TV MLS Season Pass. I know you can have your groans right now about that, so I'll let you do that. Okay. Now a quick little pit stop over to our Kraken here, who released their preseason schedule. Today is the NHL awards. Matty Beniers is up for the Calder Trophy, which he will likely win. Coach Haxtell is up for the Jack Adams Award for the best coach in the NHL. Probably an outside chance for him to win that one, just considering who else is up for it. But in another world, he'd probably win it. But, the NHL offseason, it feels so short because we're already getting news about preseason. So here, I'll put that on the screen for you to look at. Excuse me. The Kraken will kick off their preseason with 2 quote-unquote split squad games against Calgary on September 25th. One team will go to Calgary with a 6:00 start, and the other will be at Climate Pledge Arena with a 7:00 start. The Kraken will then host the Vancouver Canucks on September 28th at 7:00 and the Edmonton Oilers on October 2nd at 7:00 before they finish off with 2 road contests in Vancouver on October 4th at 7:00 and then against the Oilers in Edmonton on October 6th at 6:00. Seattle's game in Vancouver on the 4th will be held at the Abbotsford Center, which is the home of their AHL affiliate, the Abbotsford Canucks. All the remaining games will be played at their respective NHL buildings. The 2023-24 preseason will mark the 3rd consecutive season that the Kraken will play their preseason games against the Flames, Oilers, and Canucks. All of them are NHL Western Conference Pacific Division opponents. Those tickets for the games, the home games, will go on sale at a later date on Ticketmaster. So keep an eye on that if you want to join us at CPA. We'll move over here as there's something else. And after the draft, which is upcoming on this week, starting on the 27th, which is round 1, and the remaining dates are on the 28th. The Kraken have 10 picks in this year's draft. So I tried to ask Ron Francis if he planned on making another move this year. He basically said, we'll see what comes up. But the Kraken, their first pick of the draft in the first round, at least as it stands right now, is pick 20. So we'll see which new squid will join the roster. We head over here to the OL Reign, who a nice, successful road trip. We got news last week about the internationals that will join the U.S. women's national team. We haven't heard the full slate. Probably get some players from Canada. So the Reign headed down to Southern California, going back to Cali. It was a couple songs that use that lyric. Oops. For a battle here against the Wave, who are in that sort of top 5, top 6 teams in the NWSL. We're all fighting for some of the top spots in the league pretty closely. So it was a big game, considering that, it was like a send-off game for the internationals. And seeding as well, fighting for points. So a win, though, a big win on the 24th at San Diego. Our player of the game forward, Bethany Balser, an 8.9 match rating with 2 goals and 3 shots. Big performance by Boats here. The injury report, Angelina continues to be out with that knee injury. She's not on the season-ending list anymore. Just Fishlock with a leg injury still. Rose Lavelle with that leg injury. Phoebe McLaren still dealing with that back injury. Excuse me. And then Megan Rapinoe missed with a leg injury as well. So, this was big. No Megan Rapinoe, no just Fishlock. You're missing a lot of attack there from standard starters. Bethany Balser steps up. A great assist from Quinn on the first ball for a header goal. And then Sofia Huerta with her assist. Now 31 assists in the regular season, which is tied for the most in NWSL history with Jess McDonald. We will likely see that record broken this regular season. This was a big win, point blank, just to be able to go down there to San Diego against a Wave team that has had a successful year this year after kind of struggling like both of the expansion squads, Angel City and San Diego, did last year. And so for them to be able to go down there into San Diego without some key players and to really go and solidify that. Even this was a 1-1 match. So Bethany Balser's goal in this was a game winner as well. Very big in terms of points and in terms of sending this off right. We do have some team news. This dropped earlier this morning. The Reign signed 5 national team replacement players earlier today. A few of them had already spent time with the Reign. Jaden Edwards joined the Reign ahead of the season as part of the 32-player preseason roster after playing 5 years at the University of New Mexico. And she's also from Mill Creek. Number 2, Kelly Fitzgerald joining the team from HB Kolg in Denmark, where the team recently finished first in goodness, bear with me. Kivendelagen. She's a 28-year-old midfielder. Kelly Ann Livingstone joined the Reign from Denmark after starting in 8 games for Fortuna Hjørring in Kivendelagen. Among the 8 appearances, she helped the club win 5 games and earn 3 clean sheets. She was drafted by Gotham in 2022's draft, 24th overall. Natalie Vigiano, she was the Reign's 46th overall pick in this year's draft. She is officially now signed to the club's active roster. Mackenzie Weinert, who's a University of Washington grad, first joined the club as a non-roster invitee ahead of the season. She did appear in the international friendly in the preseason against Club America as a sub in 86 minutes, scoring just 3 minutes later. And that's all 5. So wait. Fitzgerald, Edwards, Livingstone, Vigiano, Weiner. Yes. So very nice. Those are your 5 national team replacement players. As the Reign will lose those 5 to the U.S. women's national team. Again, probably more with Team Canada. The Reign sit at a 7-win, 4-loss, 2-draw record, 3rd in the league table right now, 1st in the Western Division of the Challenge Cup. Looking ahead, speaking of Challenge Cup, they'll get back to action with that with the 2nd team in the Western Division on June 28th at the Portland Thorns with a 7:30 p.m. start. That's on Paramount Plus, which is another Challenge Cup match. And then back to regular season action back here at Lumen Field on July 1st versus Racing Louisville is a 12:30 p.m. kick. That is before the Sounders play Houston, and that one is on Paramount Plus as well. We look ahead here. I talked about seeding and all this stuff with the last 2 teams. Our Seawolves will continue their postseason. They roll along here with a June 24th win versus the Houston SaberCats, a 37-26 win in the first round, the Western Conference Eliminator match against Houston. These two teams had played before, and Seattle was able to come out with a pretty satisfying victory in the regular season. This was a tight match. I mean, Seattle really didn't pull away until late with tries from J.P. Smith and Rico Tadding late to really help Seattle pull away. Our player of the match, though, is Adrian Carreus. 7 points scored, 1 try scored, 166 kicking meters, 9 ball carries, and 104 running meters. I mean, Seattle back to full strength, a really quality first selection lineup for them after rolling out some of their reserves and backups to get some pretty valuable experience against San Diego in the final match of the regular season. They come out ready to go in their only playoff appearance at Starfire this year, as the next few ones were going to be on the road because of seeding. A really impressive performance for them to, Houston was going to give them all they got. Houston's had a good roster all year long. And to be able to pull away late is big. It shows some of that veteran leadership. There are players here on the Seattle roster that have been a part of the 2 championships that the team has already won. And if they're going to get to another one, if they're going to get past this Western Conference final, it's going to have to be because of that that veteran leadership. Excuse me. And it's going to be a tough one because they're playing the San Diego Legion, the consummate best team in MLR throughout the course of the year. If Seattle is going to win this game, it's going to have to be because the veterans step up. They're going to need everybody in this starting lineup to really contribute. And I think they can do it. I really do think that this team can do it. Not a lot of teams were really able to challenge San Diego this year. But I really do think the Seals can do it, and especially considering it's a rivalry match. Rivalry matches always have a different air to them. So I really have some belief in the Seawolves. That match is July 2nd at the Legion in San Diego with a 3:00 start. That is on FS2. So it's a big match there for the Seawolves. If they win, they will compete for a 3rd MLR title, their 4th appearance in the title game, all time after being there last year and falling to Rugby New York. It's a big one. So we wrap up here, of course, with our Seattle Star of the Week. And because of that big road performance, going out there, scoring 2 goals, I went with Bethany Balser. She leads the league since joining with 12 header goals. Really big performance to go out there on the road and be able to step up as one of the attackers there. She was actually our player to watch in this match. So to go out there and have this big match for your team, I know there's some stigma around headed goals, but just to be the main reason that the club was able to go down there and beat one of the top teams in the NWSL, really big for both. She is going to be very big for this club when the World Cup comes around and Seattle is playing without some of those attackers like Rapinoe, So very big performance by Bethany, just all around excellent. So with that will wrap up our June 26th episode of Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. We'll be back next week for July. We'll be in the month of July. It's going to heat up. Going to need big turnarounds from our Mariners and our Sounders. The Kraken season is slowly creeping up. The Reign are going to continue out through it. The World Cup's coming up, so they're going to need big performances from players like Bethany Balser. Until I see you next week, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can to make today.